3D movie cinema, the only show that 3 dimensions away from Salem's Lot being called Jerusalem's Lot. I'm your host, 3D Jake, and today we're looking at Salem's Lot, released in 2024. Salem's Lot was written and directed by Gary Dunbar and stars Louise Paulsman, Mackenzie Lee, Alfred Woodward, Bill Camp, and Swim Sadler. The movie is essentially a remake and a readaptation of the Stephen King novel, Salem's Lot. And this time around, this movie is a 2-hour movie that should have been a 3-hour film or a miniseries because this movie feels rushed. I love Salem's Lot. I am a huge Salem's Lot fan. I love the novel. I love the 79 film. I even like the 2004 film. Even though I have issues with the 2004 film and the 79 film, I have issues with both. I even have issues with this one. Those, though, were still pieces of art compared to this piece of shit. Because, wow. There have been people on here that say, oh, it's a fun movie, and there are people that... Usually I've seen the consensus is, if you've never read the novel, and just want to watch like a meaningless vampire film that rushes through, that gets you through in an hour, then this movie's for you. But if you are a Stephen King connoisseur, you are going to hate this movie. Because, yeah, this movie is not good. I wanted to love this movie because I went into this and I'm like, was so bummed whenever at CinemaCon that year they were showing the Salem's Lot trailer, because I was like, oh man, I wanted to see that trailer and everything, and I was even bummed because they're like, oh, this music's in it and everything. I was like, oh, that'd been cool to hear. And so of course, they finally said, oh, it's never gonna probably see the light of day because nobody. They said the movie's not very good, and I'm like, oh, come on. So of course, the movie finally got shoved around, so eventually they said, they're just going to throw it on Max. And I'm like, well, you know what? At least I get to see it for free. So that's all that matters. And so, yeah, I watched this movie, and wow. I understand why they wanted to shelve it, because this movie is a piece of shit. Like, I watched this movie, and I think that's not a fair statement for me to say it's a piece of shit. I mean, trust me, Madam Web is more of a piece of shit than this. This movie just feels like they cut half the movie out, and then they just over CGI'd the vampires, and it felt like this movie feels like it focused on less, like, instead of practical. We have technology now where we can make vampires computerized. Like, I was really looking forward to making this scary. I'm like, oh, this is Gary Dunbar who co-wrote It Chapter 1 and 2, and he also wrote and directed Annabelle Comes Home. So I'm like, and James Wan's producing it, so I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. Like, they're going to make it scary. I mean, imagine vampires being scary again. No, it's not that at all. Like, it feels like this is more It than it is, Conjuring. Because I watched this and I was like, if you would have just imagined if they would have actually made the vampires scary, this would have been really cool. Like, it felt like they were just trying so hard to make it more It and less like Conjuring, that it felt like it's just a monster mash of the two. Like, and the fact is that, they take, like, just skips around the novel. Like, it feels like, okay, we, like, literally start, like, in, like, 2/3 of the, we start, like, in, like, a couple of chapters into the book when the movie starts. And then I'm like, okay, then it jumps around to here to where, okay, we're going back to the first to introduce the Arthur. And then we're coming back around to this part. And I'm like, again, from a novel standpoint, that's what pissed me off. Because I'm like, it just, but then watching it as a movie, like It jumps around a lot from the novel to the movies, but the movie made it feel like a main where you can go through it naturally, where it doesn't feel like, oh, it's just jumping around the novel. This felt like I'm just going through it, and it feels like, okay, I'm gonna stop right here because I have to go back here, and then I'm gonna come around here, but then there's never going through it because, oh, you have to go through this place, and I'm like, what? I will say one thing it does do, it gets rid of, is the haunted house aspect of the movie, because it always pissed me off that they always had that haunted house thing where it's like, oh, when Ben Mears was a little boy, he went to a haunted house and they killed themselves and everything. That really is just swept under the rug in this movie. Like, that is just basically a haunted house that, they stay in. And, and I'm thinking, wow, like, it's just the vampires stay in. And, like, yeah, and the movie kind of just basically comes to the natural conclusion that the vampires are there. Like, they're just like, you know what? This might be vampires. Yep, I agree. And I'm just like, really? Like, we're coming to that conclusion, like, right then and there because the bite marks on his neck? I'm like, there's nothing else we can come to where it's like, someone, like there's anything else. Those could be insect bites. I mean, also flea bites, because fleas do have two bites, but I'm just saying. Like, there are anything else we could come towards besides vampires. And I'm just like, and then all of a sudden, there is one kid the kid basically just, it makes me laugh because they're like, they do the iconic scene from the book in the movies where, like, as Mark is like, where they have this, like, his best friend who's dead now as a vampire is like, let me in, Mark, let me in. And then all of a sudden he, like, lets him in. And then all of a sudden he pulls the cross out and goes like this. And he goes, I'll kill you. And he's like, Barlow wants, like the way the scene plays out, he's like, Barlow wants to meet you, Mark. And then when he does the cross like this, and he says, all of a sudden, he goes, the little boy just goes and gets comic books and books out and goes, well, I guess I have to go kill Barlow then. just randomly comes to that conclusion from what hearing like a 5-second line. He just comes. I'm like, I started laughing because I'm just like, what? I'm like, come on, like, just like, well, if he would have said Milton, it'd be like, well, I guess I got to go kill Milton now. I mean, come on, Yeah, I'm just saying, like, oh my god, that is the stupidest freaking line, Reed. And then, like, there are some moments that are unintentionally funny, like that. And then on top of it, there's a scene where, like, they when they finally realize all the vampires are there, that there's vampires in town, they pull up at, at Bill Camp's house, and he's like, hey, I think Matt, he says, Matt's not there. Why? Because there are vampires on his roof. And then he shoots the vampire. I started laughing because I'm like, it's not even played for fear, to scare you. Like, I could easily see that scene being scary where it's like, she looks up and then all of a sudden, dead zooms onto them and you just see the evil. Like, instead it's like, just them sitting on there. And I'm like, that's actually funny. I was laughing because I'm just like, don't look on there. Why? Because there are vampires. I was just like, I mean, I'm just saying, might as well have them waving, going, "Hey," I mean, it's like, I don't understand why that scene was shot. I was like, okay, like, but and then there is a scene that was played for laughs where, like, there's and they get like these crosses, and so this also irked me because it feels like the characters know this is a movie. And they know what's supposed to happen because, like, literally, every time there's a vampire, they pull out these crosses, and the crosses glow like lightsabers in Star Wars. Like, literally, every time, like, oh, we know this person's a vampire because my cross is glowing like a lightsaber from Star Wars. All of a sudden, like, and then it feels like they know that the lightsabers, like, the cross is supposed to glow because they're sitting there taping it and it's not glowing. And I'm like, well, obviously, I know it's not working because it's supposed to be glowing. Like, they didn't say that, but I'm like, that's what I was saying. I was like, well, obviously, like, it feels like they know it's supposed to glow. So at one point, like, there's the scene where after, like, apparently off screen, the little boy, the two little boys, after they become vampire, they go and they turn their mom. They're like, oh, the mom was killed off screen. And then they're at the morgue, and all of a sudden, she gets up and they pull the cross on her, and all of a sudden the cross falls apart, and Louise Paul's character goes, fuck! Like, that to me, I just felt like I started laughing, but that was meant to make you laugh. I'm just like, that was funny. And I will say, the characters in the movie are actually good. I think the characters are pretty good. Every character is pretty good in the movie. Louise Pullman and Mackenzie Lee and all that. Bill Comp is always excellent. And then, of course, and then the little kid that plays Mark, he's a fantastic. I thought he was really great because he just feels like he's fearless. Even though there's one decision, I still question why he did it, where he runs into this after the Barlow shows up and kills his family. He runs into his treehouse and then shuts the door and everything, and all the vampires are just sitting there like owls, just like, let us in, Mark, let us in. And I'm just thinking, why would you sit up in your clubhouse? Why wouldn't you try to run out and, like, run to the church? Or why wouldn't you try to go somewhere else and hide? Why would you run into your treehouse? Because all Barlow's got to do is just literally knock that fucker off, knock that entire tree down, and you're fucked. I'm just saying, like, Barlow can literally burn your tree down. Like, literally. There's like 1,000 things Barlow can do to get there in that tree. And I'm just thinking, like, it just felt like nonsense that I'm like, why would you go hide in a treehouse? It's dumb. You're very dumb for hiding in a treehouse. Especially when there's all these vampires. Like I just told Barlow, he's in the treehouse. And Barlow's can they can all literally. Why don't they just rip open the treehouse? I mean, literally, it's just wood. All they have to do is punch it, and they're in and killing him. I mean, literally, that to me made no sense logically. And I guess maybe because you could say, well, it's technically his house because it's his tree house, pun intended. And so basically, I guess they were like, well, they can't enter unless they're invited in. So I'm like, but still, I thought that was dumb. And then of course, I do like that, like the character, like, even though it kind of feels like a lot of things feel rushed in this movie. Like, it feels like by the time you realize the vampires are there, I'm like, they just, like, oh, like, this is like, I'm like, all right, we're almost there at the end of the movie already. I mean, it doesn't even really have build up, I mean, like, there are better vampire movies that have this runtime, like Fright Night, even though, yes, it is my favorite movie. And, like, that has a build up where it's like, you realize when he becomes a vampire, it's kind of built up quickly, but at the same time, it feels naturally progressed rather than it feels rushed. This one feels like they're just taking a 3 hour, it took like a long ass book, and they just rushed it in a 2 hour movie, and like, well, all this stuff figures out naturally, like, which I also like the vampires in the third act is completely different from the book, where you find out the vampires are all nesting in a drive-in movie theater in cars trunks, which I'm just thinking that's a dumb idea because what's to say someone from just going and blowing up these cars, like, what really, like, to me, it's like they waited until, especially at night, to, like, sit in the car. It just, to me, felt dumb. Like, I'm like, why wouldn't, like, it made more sense in the other two adaptations and the book where it's like, they're nesting in the town in, like, basements and underground houses. This just felt dumb that they're in a drive-through movie theater. And especially Barlow's just camped out in a freaking truck that looks like the Jeeper Creeper mobile. And I'm just thinking, that is so dumb. Like, why would you, like, I thought the whole third act was great, though. I thought, like, it was great how, like, when the sun, like, goes down and they're having to kill the vampires. And then Susan's mom is, like, the new watcher and she's trying to shoot. She kills the doctor and, like, she's shooting them and everything. And I like there was a couple of changes. I like how Matt Burke dies from Barlow and becomes a vampire. I thought that was great. And I do like how, like, the Susan, like, his mom, and then they have to run her down with a car. I thought that was great. And I like how the vampires attacking, they're attacking Ben, and then all of a sudden the son, they have to drag Barlow's coffin out. And then he gets out. He's trying to kill Mike because Mike, of course, killed his servant. And so he went to kill Mike there, and instead he killed the priest and his parents. And then I like how, like, he's just after Mike. Like, he's there to kill you, Mike. You need to run. He's there to kill you. Like, I like that aspect of it. I thought that was great. Especially, and then Ben Mears having to deal with Susan. And I like how Ben has to kill Barlow at the end. I mean, those are things I really did like in the movie. I just felt like it was so nonsense of having to deal with this rushed film. It just felt like they rushed to the finish line. And that's what kind of irked me. And also, it felt like it was over visually effects because all the vampires' eyes glow. Like, and I understand it's a nod to the original 70 Hooper film. In fact, Barlow, who is human in the novel, this one he's more Nosferatu looking like he was in the 70s version. And I understand that. I do think there are things I do like. Like, I do like how Barlow looks, and I do like how the 70s feel of the movie. And I also like how there are shots that are really creepy, especially when the little boy goes outside at night. I thought that was pretty creepy, and how the children are, like, by the treehouse, like owls. That was pretty creepy, and Barlow going to kill his parents and everything else, and like how all the vampires rise up in the town whenever Ben runs out of the church. Those are things I do like, and how Susan's mother is now Barlow's servant. Those are things I really do like. I just felt like this movie felt like it was rushed, though. I mean, if it was been like a 3 hour spread out movie, I probably would like it more, but I just feel like it's a rushed adaptation. It's not quite there. If I had to give this movie a grade, I would give it a C+.